What would it mean if you could own your attention? This week on The Culture Hack, we have Mark Groves, author, speaker, and human behavior specialist, talking about how we can create the life that we want to live. Come check it out. Hey, it's Adam here, and you're watching The Culture Hack, where we're talking about how to create engaged workspaces that unlock the potential of your teams and drive your business forward in ways you've never seen. So stay tuned. Mark Groves, welcome to The Culture Hack. Thanks so much for coming down.
I'm excited to be here.
It's been fantastic. We have covered such a wide range of topics. We talked about finding courage and taking leaps and where you find resistance. We talked about regulating your nervous system for yourself and recognizing when you need to do that, and then the effect on human systems. So how regulating your own system can then help regulate groups of people. And it was really neat. We ended up on the last episode on this idea of attention and meditation and positivity and that type of thing. So I want to get into that a little bit. This idea of like mindset and where you're applying your attention and what effect that then has on your mindset and your body.
Well, I don't think a lot of people really recognize how much their attention is being robbed from them. And not by any ill will. Like, I don't think there's like 8 people sitting around a table being like, oh my God, let's do this. But when you look at the way that social media platforms are shaped, which I'm not saying there's not a benefit to them, because there's been incredible benefit, but they are designed to make money, right? So they're share-held companies. I mean, I don't think that Instagram started out trying to extract attention. Like when I think about when I first started on there, it wasn't highly addictive because it didn't have an endless scrolling. You hit the end. It was like, no more updates, right? And so you would put it away. But when they discovered that if they could create an endless loop, they can keep you on there. They also discovered that short form video could keep you on there longer, because the way that those companies make money is from advertisers being exposed to you. So when you just realize that the main intention is to make money, then that means that the way that these things are created is actually to just capture your attention. There's a YouTuber, I can't remember his name, but he said, they're coming for every second of your life. They colonized all the land, and now they're going to colonize all the attention. And I thought, what a powerfully true thing, which, again, it's not everything is bad about it, but to recognize that for us as individuals, our responsibility is, where do we place our attention? And I was saying to a friend recently that if you take some time off of social media or have more boundaries with it, you'll actually rediscover what hope is. And I remember saying I posted a meme that was from Duncan Trussell, who's a comedian. And it said, out there's some phoneless fool sitting by a waterfall, not realizing how angry he's supposed to be. And the meme went pretty viral. Like when I checked it yesterday, because I'm getting all sorts of comments. Now it's found like the vast, so you get all these like outlier comments, which is funny. For me, at least it's funny. It's probably not funny for everyone. Because I've disconnected my worth and everything from it. Like I have now such good boundaries with social media, and I understand it, that it doesn't impact me anymore. I'm not saying it always doesn't, but I have a much stronger psychological filter now with it. And the greatest struggle I see from a lot of entrepreneurs and business people is this disdain or stress, and maybe even just tension, that exists with their relationship with creating on social media. And I understand that. I had it. I totally get it. Because from a nervous system perspective, your system doesn't know the difference between you in a conversation like this. But if you and I exit this conversation back in the day, there weren't microphones, there weren't recording devices. And so when we went to bed, we were no longer at social risk. But now there's a version of each of us, and even together, that is at social risk when we go to bed. Now, the interesting thing about this is that means that there's a part of your consciousness and your nervous system that is always surveying for safety. Now, you might be like, or the listener, you might be like, okay, maybe that might feel like a stretch. Okay, the research shows that when people go on a date and they put their phone face down on a table, they're less vulnerable in the conversation because a part of their consciousness is thinking about the phone and what is going on in that world. Now, we all know that feeling. That's the line at Starbucks where no one is actually talking, everyone's looking down.
Mhm.
And to come back to where we started is like, how do we reclaim where we direct our energy? And can we take absolute responsibility for the type of information we're bringing in and how we feel? Because in studies looking at higher social media use, the people have higher baseline levels of inflammation. So I don't see it just as a psychological cost, but it's also doom. It's also that you have a biological cost, which is probably a higher level of baseline glucose because of, when your body gets into a threat state, it dumps sugar into your blood to activate you so you can run. But your body doesn't know the difference between a notification or a poor functioning post and someone actually threatening you.
Hmm.
So when I interviewed Stephen Porges, who's the founder of polyvagal theory in the nervous system world, he said, you are always being assessed by other people when you have a social media profile. And he said, but not only people, you're being assessed by a non-human entity, an
Hmm.
algorithm that is deciding the value of your work. And I thought, damn, no wonder
Yeah,
people are anxious.
interesting.
Right. So like when we went to sleep back in the day, you actually got to sleep. But now it's not as much a place of rest till we make it one. And there are ways that you can create more space between you and these things. But just for people to have context for why they might feel the way they feel, it's very normal to feel anxious in today's world. I wouldn't even say, because it's very common now for people to say, oh, I have ADHD, and I'm not saying that can't be true. But of course, you have an attention problem in a market and world that literally monetizes your dopamine. And, Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the book, The Anxious Generation,
Mhm.
he talks about slow drip versus fast drip dopamine. So kids are getting this fast drip, and adults, from all the novelty they're seeing, new videos, new video games, etc. He said, but if you, and this was what I was doing with my son at the park the other day, he was like, let's go. Well, he's 2, so he was like, home.
Mm.
Yeah. But I was like, nah. I grabbed some twigs and I started to build like a little house with them. And then all of a sudden, for the next 45 minutes, we were searching this park for twigs. And Jonathan Haidt was talking about how when a child is engaged in an activity like that, every time the house is being constructed or broken or whatever, there's dopamine being released slowly. So it's not this massive dump. It's like over time, which we used to get actually too, like when we find information that releases it, much like the reward when we found berries. So it's
Mm.
really fascinating how our biology is not adapting at the speed of technology. How could it? But we also have to be really mindful that we are biological beings. And to me, that's actually a very important thing in terms of human systems, relationships, because like no one's coming to save us. We have to be the ones who say, okay, this is the largest experiment ever run on humanity especially without kids getting consent. And I just think a lot about that. And I think the future will be both the use of technology, but it will be the ability to be regulated in relationship to technology, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And I think maybe the tricky part or even the dangerous part about some of this stuff is it's really hard to tell when you're in that anxious state and your attention is divided.
Yeah.
You don't even realize it. And I often think of my dog when I get home. Like, it is the happiest moment of his life every time I walk in that
Isn't
door,
it the best?
right? I almost think of it as a litmus test now. When I come home and my dog, of course, is like, "Oh my god, he's home." Like,
Yeah.
I was waiting for this moment. And I'll just be like, "Hey, buddy," and, like, walk on. Like, I
Yeah.
barely acknowledge him. I might pat him on the head, but I'm just like, "Oh, I gotta do this or whatever," and I barely even if I take him for a walk later, I'm like, "All right, buddy," and I'm just going through the motions, and then versus coming home like, "Oh, you're such a good boy. I'm so happy
Right.
to see you," right? And I really noticed that about myself, that there's a stark difference, and when I'm
Mhm.
feeling very happy and very present and very connected, then yeah, I will take the time and I will reciprocate that energy and enjoy his presence much more, um, versus just like passing on through and like, yeah, 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 right.
Right.
And I just thought that's really interesting. I don't think I know when I'm not connected or not present. I think I do, but I don't think I really know.
I think we're so used to, in some way, being anesthetized by all the news and the fear, fear, fear. Like, we have to remember that fear sells. We have to
Mm,
remember that being in a fearful state or in a state of deficit creates the need for something,
mhm,
right? And again, not villainizing anything, but just calling out the reality. And when you look at people's brains, we're starting to develop what's called digital dementia. So, like dementia symptoms due to the use of technology. Not to mention, blue light inhibits melatonin production, which impacts sleep, but it's also a precursor for so many hormones. So, there's actually biological cost to these addictions. Now, you can get things like blue light blocking glasses, those are really helpful. They allow you to get your circadian rhythm back on track and get your sleep, get more deep sleep, get more REM. You could track things like that with whoops and aura rings. But, speaking of what you said, about coming home to your dog. I remember reading Seven Habits of Highly Effective
mm,
People by Stephen Covey. And he talks about, I think it was in that, he talks about how when he would get home, he would sit outside in his car for a minute and he would think, the next 5 minutes are the most important 5 minutes of my life. And it is the moment I walk in that door and I greet all the people I love. And I think a lot about that.
mm.
And that was what he was like before. That was probably when it was just you mailed each other. You wrote
Yeah,
letters and shit,
yeah.
and you had rotary phones that took forever to dial 0, and he was being so mindful of that presence, and I think we just have to continue to remind ourselves of that. And when you get your screen report, and again, none of this is to experience shame, it's to experience clarity, which when you get your screen report, it's often a job, like 5 hours a day, 10 hours a day.
Mm,
And it's like, what could you do with that? And I'm not saying people don't need Netflix to regulate sometimes, of course, or like some Ted Lasso to make them laugh and bring joy into their lives.
yeah.
But what could you do with the time when you're saying you dream of something else, you desire something else? There's a great quote that went around. I think it's from the Wall Street Journal. And it says, the next time you say, I don't have time, replace it with, it's not a priority. And that really shifts the level of responsibility and accountability that we have to our lives. I think a lot about that because if I work with people who are exceptional, usually exceptional entrepreneurs, business people, leaders, but their personal lives are maybe a little bit in shambles, or their personal lives are good, but they want more from their purpose than their work. And I always think like, if you're going to aspire to be a 7-figure business person, why are you not aspiring to be a 7-figure father or parent? Like, why is there spaces in your life that tolerate less than mediocrity? And I would argue that actually, you can't turn yourself down 20% in one area of your life
Mm,
and not turn yourself down in all others. It's impossible. That's because work life balance is bullshit. There's like life, and then there's what you have in life. And then you have to ask yourself, is your personal life bringing you life or taking it? Is your work giving you life or taking it? It's that binary. And when we can wake up to the realities of that and also just that we want more, then we can learn the skills. We can learn where we're placing our attention, which, as I said at the end of last episode, is the greatest act of rebellion, is to say, no longer will I let a company or a person or a system decide who I am and what I'm going to want from my life. And when we do that, that's the stop to that's where we're like living life from other people's expectations and who we think we need to be, to deciding who we are and who we want to be. And what a gift that is to be in relationship with. Like, imagine if your Tinder profile said, we're going to use our relationship to come alive. Or your business said, this culture is about expanding the possibility of every individual, because then collectively we're unstoppable. And that is a culture that will completely change lives. I've seen people within my own operation, my own business, heal things from their childhood because they were such overfunctioners and didn't have good boundaries. And they were like people pleasers, super high achievers, great as employees. But I was like, damn, you should have said no to that. Like, I can tell that you're exhausted, and you're exhausted because you learned somewhere that you couldn't say no. And I operate a culture where no is celebrated. We can hear the no and then let's talk. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have negotiations or conversations. But I think for people to recognize that if you can't say no to where your attention goes, you're not truly saying yes. And that's a really important thing to recognize. If you can't say no to the relationship dynamics you're in, or the culture you're part of, or the way some of the behaviors you have when you lead, then your yes is actually inauthentic. It's performative, it's people pleasy, it's not real. And people sense that shit. They smell it from a mile away.
I love how this makes me think of coming full circle from the first episode. We talked about finding that courage to make that leap. And we overcomplicate everything. We search for reasons. Is it safer? Is it less risky? Is it like, what do you think? What do you think? Like, should I? But it is that simple. Does this make me feel more alive or not?
Right.
Right. And if it doesn't, then I think the more you can be in tune with that, the more you can make better decisions to, do what you love or listen to your intuition, and the universe abides. Right?
It meets you. And there's that thought that like fate is just, life is just fate and da da da. It's like, no, man. Like, you have to meet fate where it meets you. So you have to actually start to move towards the thing you want. And then it will meet you there. Years ago, I wrote this, I'll call it a poem. Maybe we'll call it a poem. Dare I call it a poem? But I said, I hope that you have the courage to live the life that you desire, so that we can meet at the coffee shop where we're meant to be. And you don't spend your life loving with half your heart, because so much of what is waiting to intervene with us requires us to be there. And if we don't cultivate those 10 seconds of courage to actually take a different way, try something different, say something we've never said, claim a dream we've never claimed, then nothing can meet us in that space. And like, what a beautiful thing it is, much like we said in the first episode, to leap and to say, I trust. And isn't that how the universe works anyways? It's always trying to make everything better.
What a poetic way, I think, to cap this whole thing off, right? It's for me, it's a message of hope. Like, there is a way you can feel better, and we have more power over that than we think we have, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that you called it poetic. That feels good for me.
I like that. I like that. They could go home and write a poem.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
a second poem. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It has been an enlightening conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed how much I've learned and how much you've shared. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If someone does want to follow you on Instagram or check out your work, where should they go?
Well, first, thanks for having me. And I think, it's important to acknowledge the level of commitment you make to both this show, but just to informing people and bringing people on and having these conversations about culture, about life, about everything. So thank you for creating this space. I really appreciate it. And our friendship has been one of the richest additions to my life. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
For me, you can find me, all my romantic relationship work, at createthelove.com or at createthelove on Instagram. For more personal, like if you want to work with me, markgroves.com. There's a coaching space in there. And also my Instagram at it's Mark Groves.
Okay, fantastic. Well, there you have it. If you are just tuning in, you can watch the other 3 episodes. We've gone into so much depth. My mind is kind of full. I feel like I'm going to be waking up in the middle of the night tonight, like, like I need to regulate. But anyway, there you have it. Mark Groves. Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching The Culture Hack. Do you want to chat culture and engagement? Give us a call and come on the show.